The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, we're going to be diving back into the more conspiratorial realm, but from a different perspective. We're going to be diving into some of the biblical conspiracies relating to the Mandela effect and how it's played into a lot of the dark, strange things happening in today's society. And I've had a few people mention this idea about the reign of Lucifer, and I haven't talked about it too heavy on the show, but today's guest is going to lay the record straight with that, on top of course, the biblical Mandela effects and his reasoning on why he thinks all this stuff is happening. I think you guys are definitely going to enjoy this episode, but before we get into this fascinating conversation, I first want to give a big shout out to the most recent 5-star review that the show has received. This one came from Brian315. And I'm assuming this is the longtime listener, Brian, who's been a guest on the show before. And I just want to say that I greatly love and appreciate you, brother, being around since the very beginning of the show. But his 5-star review says, boom, Shane is a down-to-earth dude. Been a fan since the beginning. Just finished episode 288 with Charlie Robinson. Good stuff. Keep up the great work. And Brian, I definitely intend to do that, and especially with awesome listeners like you supporting the show since the very beginning, I will not be going anywhere, and I will keep pumping out awesome content for you. And on that note, if anybody else wouldn't mind leaving some reviews on iTunes or Spotify that I can read on the show and give you guys a big shout out, I would greatly appreciate it. But if you guys don't end up doing it, I just appreciate that you guys are there listening to the show, because again, I wouldn't be showing the show without you guys. And just one more quick update before we get into the show. I'm going to keep saying it all month until we get to the point. April 3rd will be the next live episode of Bizarre Inquiries, and that'll be happening on the Open Minds Media YouTube at about 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. More information on that will be given out as we get closer to the date through social media, through episodes, and of course the live link for that will go active the day of, if not the day prior, but make sure you guys keep track on social media and make sure you guys are able to pop into that live episode. And if you guys want to make your mark on that episode, you guys can always leave us clips, articles, or questions to discuss. And if you guys want to send those into me, you guys know how to do it. Email, social media, submission forms, any way you guys want to get a hold of me, just make sure you guys send me those clips or articles before the next one. And if you don't make it in time, then we will end up pushing it to the next live episode, which will be the first Thursday of the following month. So just one last thing before we get into the show. If anybody is interested in being a guest on the show, or if anybody has had an encounter or experience they would like to share on the show, or possibly have me investigate, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com. Or you guys can get a hold of me through the hotline. You guys can call or text that, whatever is easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available on the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome back to the show, for now his second appearance, please welcome John Kirwin from Wake Up or Else.
Yeah. Hey, Shane, great to be with you, my friend.
Absolute pleasure to have you back on. It's been almost a year, I believe, because it was like December 2023, I think, when we were checking it out, episode like 186 or 187. So it's been a hot minute.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it. I was just scanning the different titles of a bunch of your podcasts, so I feel very much at home with this crowd for sure.
I was going to say, we're talking about it before the show about like what type of stuff I talk about on the show. And I was telling you, I try to keep it like an open-minded talk show. So it's pretty diverse with topics so that I'm not, just stuck in one specific realm. Because I'm sure at least with the stuff we're getting into today, it's going to get a little conspiratorial. It's going to get a little woo-woo. It's going to be a fun conversation. A little bit of everywhere as far as open-minded topics go. So.
Yes, buckle your seatbelts. Keep your hands in the window.
And I guess a good spot to start for anybody that may not have listened to the last episode that you were on. I can also know that you have some more work since last time you were on because you had just released your first book last time you were on. Why don't you let everybody know a little bit about yourself, a little bit about what you do, and a little bit about your new book.
Awesome. Yeah, we're on Wake Up or Else on YouTube and Rumble. Our website's wakeuporelse.com. My second website is alteredbible.com. And Wake Up is a Christian fellowship for the truther community. And then we also are doing an outreach now. My goal is to give away 10 million copies of my book. And the reason is for the last 8 years, I've been providing a biblical analysis of the Mandela effect. So a lot of people have heard of the Mandela effect. It's a really weird phenomenon. It's definitely happening. There's millions of people now claiming it's happening. So what, are they all crazy? No, they're not crazy. But the problem is, Shayn, is that the things that are changing in our reality include the Bible. Now, this bumps up against, 500 years of church dogma. But like, just to go cut to the chase, I have a very good friend who I have an interview with him on my channel. His name is Dr. Paul Grafton Holt. He's got 4 theological degrees, including a PhD in theology. He's also written 12 theological academic books, some of which are used in Bible colleges as curriculum. And one of his books is the KJV Bible and the Quantum Effect. So we're not confused biblically illiterate boobs is what I'm trying to say, right? Because if a guy like that with those kind of creds is saying that this is true, then you got to throw off most of the arguments that come at us that are saying that this is not happening. So
I know on the last episode, we talked about it just briefly a little bit at the end, but the main, I feel like is a really good introduction into this topic for a lot of people is the whole lion and what fiasco, because I know that everybody has learned it one way, but it's a totally different way than what you think it is now.
Yep. There's a lot of familiar scriptures in the Bible that aren't the same way that we all remember them. And that it took me 8 years to figure this out. God's patient with me, but what's happening is that most people that don't believe this is happening will try to suggest that we're just misremembering, but that observation is actually incomplete because what's actually happening is we're all misremembering the same way. All right, so I did a chat GPT analysis where I created a post or prompt. I said, I want you to calculate the probability of 5 people misremembering 5 Bible quiz questions the same way. And I gave it some other parameters to make it harder, like there's only 10 possible answers for each question. Okay, so if you start with, let's say, judge not, blank, ye be judged. Most people remember that one. It's a King James one. So if I threw that out there, do you think you'd have a memory of that?
Wouldn't it be unless?
Yeah, judge not, blank, ye be judged.
Unless he be judged, right?
Unless is not what most people. If you do King James, most people would say lest.
Lest.
Judge not, lest ye be judged. That's what most people will respond with. And unfortunately, that has never existed in the King James Bible or any Bible. What it actually says is judge not so that you won't be judged.
Yeah, that doesn't even sound right.
No, it doesn't sound right. And then the next one is, this is Job, right? And he's going through the meat grinder and his wife's haranguing him. And she's like, just curse God and die. And he goes, shall we not receive good and evil from the hand of the Lord? And then he says the famous line, the Lord blanks and the Lord blanks away. Can you remember that one?
Isn't it giveth and taketh or something?
Come on,
Taketh
baby.
away?
Give me the whole thing. Give me the whole thing.
The Lord giveth and taketh away, right?
Yes. Thank you. Did you see that? Everybody, I want you to just press the pause button, because what you just witnessed is a statistic impossibility.
I'm assuming that I got it wrong from what it actually says, right?
You got it right.
I got it right.
In other words, your memory is working just fine. The problem that you have is you have a different timeline behind you, or you've shifted to a different Earth, or there's some bizarre, unexplainable phenomenon that's causing you, Shayn, to misremember that the same way. I don't know, let's say 1 billion people. It's basically everybody over the last 8 years will say, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Everybody listening to me remembers it that way. But this is the way it's always been. You ready? The Lord gave and the Lord hath taken away.
Also, it just doesn't sound right.
No.
The same idea is there, but it doesn't sound correct, you know?
Right. And then the natural mind is scrambling for explanation. I don't care what your explanation is, because here's the problem you have. The math doesn't care about your explanations. The math is the scientific discipline of probabilities, and it's very rigid. Okay, so then you go on to the next 3 examples, which are in every Bible. The first one is... who went in to kill the firstborn in Egypt? Now, you might not remember that, but people who have been in the Bible remember the death angel. Okay, the death angel went in to kill the firstborn when Moses was sent to judge Egypt, and it's never been the death angel. It's always been the Lord himself. Another one is when Jacob wrestled all night. Who did Jacob wrestle with all night? Every pastor, I could go into 10 pastors in a row, and they'll all tell me he wrestled with an angel. 10 out of 10 will tell me that. 10 out of 10 Christians will tell me that know their Bibles. But now it has always said he wrestled with a man. And now I've done this. I have videos of people taking on the street quizzes, and they'll all say it. So I've proven that basically anybody that knows their Bible will misremember the same way. And what I'm saying, that once you get to 5 of those, like here's one, you'll probably remember this one. Remember when Noah was after the flood, he's on the water, and he finally sends a dove out to go find land, and the dove flies back and it has something in its mouth. Do you remember what it had in its mouth by any chance?
I do not remember this one.
You do not?
No, I do not remember this one.
It's an olive something.
Olive branch?
Ding, 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 ding. Correct. You win a new car. Tell her what he's won. Oh my gosh. That's 2, you guys. Okay. What just came out of Shayn's mouth, olive branch, has never existed in any Bible. The King James, listen, the 1611 Cambridge, the 5 revisions, the 1769 Oxford, that takes care of all versions of the King James Bible. The NAS, the NIV, EAS, you name it, it doesn't appear anywhere. Okay, so that means we're not confused by Bible versions or variants. We're not confused by modernizations, because in order for it to be a modernization, it would have to be one way in the original and a different way in the later versions, and it's not. And it's not a misprint, because you can't go out into the world and find a misprint that says branch. It doesn't exist. So what just happened is not possible, because you didn't say an olive berry or an olive root. You said an olive branch. And I can get hundreds of millions of people to say olive branch. So then you have to say, how did branch get into the minds of everybody? It doesn't just get there. It had to be put there. So then people will try to offer the most embarrassing idea that they're just confused by misquotes from pop culture. Okay, now, the reason that's so ridiculous is, first of all, if that was true, again, it wouldn't explain why we're misremembering the same way, because we would still be misremembering differently, unless the only misquote was exactly the same. But even then, so what? Okay, I know my Bible. It's like, if you go over to Facebook and you see somebody saying there is no God, what do you become an atheist all of a sudden because the guy's saying there's no God? I mean, what are you talking about?
Everybody's going to the same church and they've all heard it wrong from the same person.
Right. Right. So this one statistic basically vanquishes all of the following objections. These are all the reasons why I have been given why the Bible isn't changing. They'll tell me that God preserves his word, the Bible can't change. And I've basically written a 400-page book called The Mandela Effect, Supernatural Bible Changes, and the Doctrine of Preservation of Scripture to refute the fact that God preserves his word. It doesn't teach that. All right, then the devil isn't that powerful. See, the problem with that argument is that presumes that God isn't the one calling for this. God is the one that has initiated this as a judgment on his people for turning the Bible into an idol. They have exchanged head knowledge for a relationship. And if you read like Amos 8, for instance, here's what Amos 8:11 says. This is God talking. He says, I will send a famine, but not a famine of bread. It'll be a famine of the word. And men will seek the word, but they will not find it. They'll travel from the north, the south, the east, and the west, and they will not find the word. That's God. Okay, so I have 5, 6, like 7 other examples in my book where God withdrew his word as a judgment. So the idea that we're suggesting that the devil has somehow gotten an upper hand on God is ridiculous. The devil can't do anything unless God lets him. And so he's letting him. Revelation 13. The beast is given power and authority to wage war against the saints and to prevail against them. All right, then we're told, well, you're just misremembering. Well, I just dispelled that because that's not accurate. We're not misremembering. We're misremembering the same way. Or they'll say the human memory is unreliable. I can dispel that one real easy. Here's a question. If you go to your aging parent and for the first time, they don't recognize you, they say, who are you? And you're like, Shayn, this is Shayn. I'm your son. Oh, who? All right. So what conclusion would you draw, Shayn, if that happened?
I would assume they have Alzheimer's at that point or dementia.
Right. Okay. Now, what you just admitted is that you believe the human memory is extremely reliable when it comes to vivid memories.
Yes, definitely. Especially
Okay,
things that you learn during an age where you're basically constructing your framework of like how you perceive reality, which is what a lot of people are when they're undergoing a lot of these like biblical studies.
Yes.
It's a time when things stick like a sponge, like your brain's like a sponge.
This argument is very convenient for this topic, but what that proves is that really people that claim that don't really believe it themselves, because that is the same answer I get from everybody. So basically what that proves is that people actually know the human memory is so reliable when it comes to vivid memories that if a parent can't recognize their child, the only explanation would be mental illness, because the human memory is so reliable that the only way that could happen is if there was a mental breakdown, right? Well, we have memories, not all of them, but some are as vivid as our children's faces. For me, it was the Monopoly guy had a monocle. That was my number one because I grew up playing Monopoly. I remember we wore the game out and we had to get new ones. We played it so much. Okay. And I'm here to tell you that my Monopoly guy in my timeline had a monocle, bro. Period.
See, mine was Curious George. Every time the Mandela Effect comes up, Curious George having a tail. I remember having a stuffed animal of Curious George that I used to spin up around my head from the tail, so I wouldn't have had that memory unless that thing had a tail.
See, that's what we're dealing with. We don't understand how this is. I mean, it's so bizarre. The fact that your reality is morphing. I mean, and when you really get into this, it gets even more bizarre. Because understand, like, let's take your Curious George thing. If you go back and you look at the original trademark from whenever Curious George was first invented, we go back, we do our research. What we find is that the Curious George cartoon never had a tail. In other words, it didn't have a tail, and then the Mandela Effect came in 10 years ago and changed it, and now it doesn't have a tail. It's way more exotic than that. what we're experiencing, the best way I describe it is that a new timeline has been edited into our existing timeline. So right up until whenever, our memories aren't affected by this phenomenon, but our timeline is. So the reality, the realm, the data sphere is telling us that the thing never had a tail. And we're like, what are you talking about? He had a tail. No, he didn't. And he never had a tail.
Hold on tight, everyone. Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. But if you don't mind taking a second to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook, and Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, I'd greatly appreciate it. And feel free to spark up a conversation. I love getting to know you guys. And now back to the show.
So this is why, Christians look at this and they're like, well, that's ridiculous. I can see Matthew Henry in his commentary in the 1600s talking about how the wolf will dwell with the lamb in Isaiah 11:6. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. In this timeline, the Bible has always said wolf. It's never said the lion will lay down with the lamb. It's always said wolf in this timeline. But we are somehow from a different timeline, or we've shifted from this earth to a similar earth where it's in this other earth, it never was lion, it was always wolf, right? Or there might be some other really bizarre realm change philosophy, or maybe the way we're decoding the realm, but I don't really know. I don't know. I just know it's not misremembering.
No, definitely not. And I mean, just to make a couple of weird connections, it seems like a lot of this stuff kind of started popping up around like 2012 or so, even though the memories go back farther than that. So I'm kind of curious if we could find like a pinpoint about when everybody started noticing this stuff, if it could almost be like a point where we know that some of this stuff started. And kind of depending on which background you go into, and maybe they can kind of somewhat mix a little bit, but you either have like the quantum side of things where you have this whole timeline concept, or timelines are blending, which is more like, I guess, the sci-fi concept kind of diving into it. But on the other side, you also have like the biblical aspect to a lot of this type of stuff where you're wondering like, how could this stuff be being altered in our reality? And I mean, on that side, I could definitely see the theory that, demons, the devil, Lucifer, whatever you want to call them, these different beings are able to manipulate people's perception. So maybe that could potentially be a portion of it. Or like I was trying to say, kind of blending the two together with all of the weird stuff going on with CERN, with all like the particle colliding, all of that, with all the weird rituals and everything they were doing when those places opened. Maybe there is a tie between smashing together particles, opening rifts or doorways, and this whole demonic realm. Like it could all kind of mess together, depending on, I guess, which way you're coming into it from. But
it's a very good point. Depending on your worldview, you're going to probably adopt an opinion about this. Like, for instance, we'll go down this rabbit hole for. One guy that I know very well, he got gas at the Exxon in his town for like 10 years. And one day he goes up and it's a Sunoco, like overnight, it's a Sunoco. And he's like, what? This has not been a Sunoco. So he goes in and he talks to the manager, and the manager's like, well, I've worked here 8 years and it's always been a Sunoco. All right. So we started drilling down on this. And then I got another really good friend who is a lineman. He does, tests the oil pipelines to make sure they're safe. Right. And he has this one route that he goes on, the same route, for 20 years or something. Right. And he calls me up and he goes, are you sitting down? He's like, I got this route. I'm driving down this road. I know exactly every blade of grass on this route. He goes, I turn this around this bend and there's an entire graveyard there and an entire subdivision that's never been there. So I drive in. I'm totally freaked out. He's got a YouTube channel, Harbinger of the Harvest, it's called, does Mandela stuff. So he drives in there, and this place has been there for years. You could tell it's worn and stuff. And he's like, how? I mean, it's really hard for me to embrace the idea that we're in the same place and the place that we're in changes. Okay, like think of a video game where you have a cheat code and you just do Shift F, and then your character suddenly has a whole new set of chainmail and a new sword, right? Bing! All right, what I'm thinking is more rational, or it's easier for me to accept, is that we're actually like the veil between parallel Earths is thinning, and we're shifting over to another Earth, like the multiverse concept, because that makes more sense for my natural mind, where if I go to a different Earth, well, in that other Earth, that graveyard and that subdivision was always there. That Sunoco station was always there. Because how do you explain the people? Right? Where did the people come from who have worked there for 8 years when they never, right? There's no explanation for that except the parallel universe, multiverse. What do you think of that?
That's kind of what I was kind of gearing towards with that too, because I was kind of thinking about it kind of this way, that if you did something that caused some type of ripple to happen in time, whether it's through occult means or through simply something with science, with like clashing particles, for example, if you basically created this point where like timelines split, you always hear about it in sci-fi, and I don't know how true it is, because again, everybody's kind of theorizing about this stuff, but that timelines will eventually try to correct themselves. So it makes you wonder if there was a point where there was one timeline, they did something, it split into two, and now it's kind of bending back and they're trying to reblend into each other again. And we're at this point of like the reblending from whatever event caused it to split out and have to come back in the first place. And now it's maybe in the process of trying to correct itself, and it's kind of sorting the information out left and right.
100%. I do agree. I see multiple timeline evidences. We've proven that in our Mandela effect community, because we have people that experience what are called, we call them time tributaries, or reality bubbles, we call them. So for instance, one of the things that we rely on to determine if something is a Mandela effect is consensus. So if I remember the lion laying down with the lamb, but the Bible's never said that, that's one thing. But if everybody else remembers the lion, well, that sort of supports the hypothesis, because now you have a really unexplainable thing. How did it get into everybody's mind, right? Well, what we found is that even though you could have like 100 people on a live stream and not take a poll, who remembers lion laying down with the lamb? It's like 100%, but there would be one person who swears on their mother's grave that in Bible college 20 years ago, there was this big debate about the wolf laying down with the lamb. So in their memory, on that one thing, they have a different timeline, but the rest of the things they share with us. So it's like we're all on this raft going down a river, a time river, but then sometimes certain people will just jump off the raft onto a tributary on one thing and then come back with everything else. It's so bizarre.
See, that's kind of what I was saying about like the timelines where they split and correct themselves. It almost kind of makes you wonder if they do this thing where it's one straight timeline, they bounce out, they come back, but then there's like a ripple when they come back in, where almost imagine it like two lines dissecting each other back and forth. And then as those points crease, that's when everything kind of like, it basically has to ripple itself back in, where you have these like, it seems like they go in spurts, where you have like a bunch of weird Mandela effects that'll pop up and then they'll kind of go away for a minute and then new ones will pop up. It makes you wonder if it's that like bounce back until the timelines completely correct themselves back up. But I mean, bringing up the lion and the lamb thing, I mean, that's always how I've known it. And it seems like most expressions end up coming from a lot of biblical references. So the whole idea with, May comes in like a lion, out like a lamb, or in like a lamb, out like a lion, that whole expression, like, I don't feel like that would have came from anywhere else unless it came from like a biblical reference to begin with. So like, has that expression changed? And if so, like, it doesn't have the same place. It doesn't mean the same thing. And same with the biblical verse with it.
That's where the term, extending the olive branch comes from too. It comes from the biblical reference of the olive branch coming back from the dove.
Yeah, see, another expression that's where it's this weird bounce back, is that you still have some residuals of it existing the other way.
All right. Well, everybody always wants to know, it's a common question. Well, how is this happening? All right. So I've actually been able to find this is the best objective evidence that I have of how it's happening. All right. And I hate to be led around. The reason we're truthers is because we're sick of being led around by the elites. The central planners are masters in telling us one thing, and there's 5 levels of truth behind it. Like, the transpocalypse, to me, is one of the most debilitating things. If you start studying how many of the people that you see on the TV screen and in the world stage are inverts, they look like a man, but they're, like Michelle Obama is actually a guy, right?
Oh, 100%.
But what a lot of people don't realize is how many of everybody is an invert. It's a transpocalypse, and it's so destabilizing because you feel like, what am I, a rat in a maze? I'm in some sort of menagerie. Anyway, this is the first one is CERN turns up their Hadron Collider to full power for the first time. I think it's July 2017, if I got my dates right. Well, that month corresponds exactly to when the searches for the term Mandela effect went from basically nothing forever to straight up. So there was a correlation between CERN turning up its Hadron Collider to 100% and searching for the term Mandela effect from Google Analytics. That's the first objective evidence of what's causing it. Maybe it's CERN. Okay, then that isn't that compelling, but this is. Okay, many of you have probably heard of Cliff High. He created the WebBot. Okay, the WebBot, Cliff High is a genius. The guy's IQ is off the charts, and he's a linguist and a programmer. And back in the early 2000s, he created this spider thing to go out on the internet and look for, listen to conversations and then run the conversations through these algorithms. He was trying to get an edge to trade stocks, basically, because people are talking about different stocks, right? Well, what happened was this WebBot started to return predictions of the future that were unrelated to stocks. And I was listening to him way back then. This is like 7 years ago. And I remember the first one he said, the WebBot is saying that there's going to be a lake in Peru that's going to empty out overnight. So I just marked it down in my thing. And what do you know? I'm telling you, as God is my witness, Shayn, 3 months later, a lake in Peru emptied out overnight. It was on the news. So I'm thinking, the elites look at how far they go to with NASA faking the moon. I mean, there's pretty elaborate stuff that they do. So maybe this guy's in on it or whatever. But then he had 2 or 3 more, and they were like, there's no way. This guy's onto something. Because then he started to explain it. Basically what he said is humans are minorly clairvoyant. So he called them psychic leaks. So we're sort of, in some capacities, we're tapping into this quantum consciousness, the Akashic records, the Holy Spirit, or whatever the thing is. We're getting knowledge that's beyond knowledge, maybe not even knowing it, right? And then this algorithm that he created is compiling it, and it works. So what he did, all that to say that the guy's got some creds, okay? His thing is interesting. So what he did was he pointed this WebBot at the geographic location of some of the D-Wave computers to read the conversations that were going on in and around the D-Wave, which is a quantum computer that I believe is fallen angel technology. And the Gordy Rose in a TED Talk said that this thing actually works by when you get down to the quantum level, it's another dimension. So it's depositing the question in the other dimension and then retrieving the answer. So it's so bizarre. Well, what happened though was these qubits were failing. If somebody would walk by the thing while it was operating, it would shut down. So they realized that what they had to do was we had to isolate it from human consciousness in order for the qubit to function. And they figured out that if they suspended the qubit in a cylinder and brought it down to close to 0 Kelvin, that acted as a shield for human consciousness. Why? I don't know. But that's what they do. Okay. So then you've got so what they basically have is a computer that's interacting with another dimension in a human vacuum black hole. Okay. And at the center of that anomaly, if I can borrow the term from Star Trek, emanating out geographically from that area, that point in space, is a high concentration of reports of Mandela effects. Think about that. That blew my mind.
So there's a specific center point to it then.
That was a direct correlation. Because, see, I believe Cliff High is legit because I've watched him for years. And I know his webbot. I actually subscribed to his thing because he started pointing his webbot towards cryptos. And I was trading cryptos way back then. So the guy is totally legit. So when he told that story, I was like, wow, that's strong, man. That's really strong evidence that this D-Wave technology, and actually CERN created this really dark video. It's called Synergy.
Oh, I ended up talking about that before on one of the episodes I did of Bizarre Inquiries, just how weird and occult just the trailer was.
Oh, yeah. It's totally bizarre. Well, in that video, they've got one of the scientists holding a sign. It says Bond 1. And then, let me get this right. Okay, so Bond 1, Mandela, Bond 1, because the first Bond's name was Nelson. So the sign says Bond 1, the first Bond, and then Mandela. So the sign was basically saying, yeah, we're taking responsibility. We're causing the Mandela effect. They claimed it.
Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts, live access to episodes, or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits with 7-day free trials available. And we are back, so let's hop right in. The other weird part about that whole video is I don't remember if just from watching the trailer of it, it's talking about the occult ideas that are just wrapped around CERN as a whole, not to mention like their whole ritual they did when they first started the place. But within that video, they were doing this weird thing where they had the worker from CERN dancing inside of a circle in the middle of this like dark, like black and white noir like shaded like desert with this figure with like a black hood like walking around outside the circle.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me at least, that sounds like the idea about existing within a reality but trying to break out of that reality while these dark beings are watching you from outside of your reality. And it's like, I don't understand how else anybody could take that, just knowing how CERN works or like what the whole concept of what they're trying to even do is. Because CERN, they're maybe not as direct about it, but they have a hydrogen particle collider down in, I believe, Tennessee, in like Anchorage, Tennessee, or something like that. And they'll straight up tell you they're trying to open up like doorways to other dimensions. Like they're open about it. Like,
Yep. The guy that was the head scientist for CERN was interviewed in an Italian magazine, and he said, we're opening up a portal and we're sending something through, or something might come through. Now, the real kicker. Well, there's a few things about CERN. First is the logo is clearly a 666.
100%.
Then their mascot out front is Sira, or
Shiva.
What's Shiva? Thank you. The goddess of destruction, right? But the real kicker is that the CERN is built on an old temple to Apollo, right? But if you go to Revelation 12, I think it speaks about the angel will bring a key down. A key is given that will open the abyss. And out of the abyss, guess who comes out? Apollyon.
Just different archetypes with different names.
Oh man. So these elites are really, really, really religious. I mean, they are more religious than most Christians. So they're dealing with stuff, ancient stuff, and they're deceived, though. They think that Satan's actually a good guy and that God's done the raw deal and he's going to overthrow him, but they're deceived. Because Isaiah 14 says, this is at the judgment. He says, and they will say, is this the man that caused nations to tremble? That's all the people that followed Satan, thinking he was going to set up his kingdom and they were going to rule with them. But he's a defeated foe. God's just letting him run around to prove a point.
I know that a lot of the people that dive into the occult aspect of stuff, because we've done a few episodes diving into a couple different societies on my other show, Bizarre Encounters, but like their whole ideology is essentially that like God basically kept knowledge from them, and that this Lucifer character was basically the good guy just trying to give knowledge to the people, just trying to let them understand the way of the world. And they basically have like the same Bible, but they kind of view it from a different context, rather that like Lucifer was the savior trying to give knowledge and God was the one who was trying to keep knowledge away. So it's like, it's weird. It's the same story, but it's just like a totally different like viewpoint and vantage point that you can tell is definitely like intended to be corrupted. But it's just such a weird way about thinking about it, because a lot of people will dive into this occult stuff and they want to know like why they would side with the bad, but it's not that they necessarily think that they're siding with the bad. It's rather that they're thinking that, again, there's not necessarily this infinite good or infinite evil, but rather that there's this idea about being given this knowledge that humans aren't maybe intended to have, or that they believe they should have had in the first place. And that's basically what they're siding about, isn't anything other than the quest for knowledge itself.
Mm-hmm. You know, and Satan's got a really good pitch too, because if you think about it on the surface, I mean, Satan's offer sort of looks better. It's like, hey, you could get chicks, you could have all the chicks you want, you could, do what thou wilt. You don't have all these rules. Come on, you want to have fun. You've got urges, right? And you want, well, okay. And over here you got Jesus. Hey, follow me, and you got to take up your cross and deny yourself. You got persecuted. It's great over here. And you're like, why would I go over there? Well, I'm here to tell you that I drank the cup of demons down to the dregs. I broke all 10 commandments, including murder. I have tested the boundaries of perversion and vulgarness and thieving and every aspect of sin to the bottom. And I found that it left me with leanness of soul. I was so empty that it wasn't working, right? And so I was in the bookstore one time, and I saw a book on Satanism. This was the title of the book. And I opened it up, and the front page, it said, the purpose of Satanism is self-indulgence. And what I thought of immediately was, well, if Christianity is the opposite, then the opposite of Satanism is self-sacrifice, right? So think about it. If you stop eating, you go on a fast for 2 days. The moment you start eating a piece of bread or even a lettuce leaf, the flavor is like bursting, isn't it?
Yeah, you appreciate it more.
What happens is when you deny yourself, you're able to enjoy things more.
And on the opposite side, that's why the elites get into all the taboo stuff, is because they do as thou will, and they just do whatever they want, to the point where nothing is enough anymore. Nothing is fun. Nothing is entertaining. So they just keep looking for the next level,
Exactly.
It's an addiction process. Same with the knowledge. Satan knows that, or Lucifer knows that the quest for knowledge is never going to end. So it's going to be this endless addiction that, you give them a little sprinkle and they're going to keep chasing it to get that next piece of knowledge, the next piece of knowledge. And you just keep them on this constant path and chase their entire life.
Yeah, it doesn't work. See, the problem is we're born into God's universe. He's not a drunkard and a whoremonger and a liar and a cheat. He's holy, and he'll bring us to him, and he'll change our nature through the born again experience so we can live holy. But you can't change him or his universe. So if you're going to live in a rebellion to the way he is, then it's going to go hard for you. It's not going to be easy. And, you might have fun, like, Cyndi Lauper or whatever, but you're not going to have joy and peace. There's no peace for the wicked. I mean, peace is the most valuable commodity. I'm here to tell you. So many people can't even get to sleep at night. They got to take a sleeping pill. They're trying to drown their angst in booze and drugs and sex, and it just, it gets it for a minute, but then that wears off and you're worse. I mean, you're just going down, baby. You're going down without Jesus, okay? And the Holy Ghost. That's what you need.
It almost makes you wonder if you kind of get into this whole idea that Lucifer can't do anything in this universe that God isn't already basically allowing him to be able to do. So you get into this like altering of Bible verses and everything, and it makes you wonder because there's been many tests throughout the Bible. Like, what if this isn't a test to see who the true believers are, to see who's going to stand there and fight for the true word of God, and how many people are going to just say, oh, that must have been what it was the entire time. Like, it makes you wonder to see if it's a test to know who the true believers are and the true ones who are supposed to stand up and say like, hey, this isn't right. And maybe he's trying to see who are the people who are going to fight for the word of God. I mean, if you're looking at it from that context, it's definitely a viable option. I mean,
it's crazy. I mean, I'm actually working now on a talk that I'm going to do that actually draws a correlation. And we talked about this in the pre-show, the Satan's little season idea that we're actually living in the period of time after the millennial reign. There's a lot of really smart Christians that are now embracing that. And I can share why if you want to go into it.
Actually, if you want to start off at the very beginning of this whole concept as a whole, because I have not had a chance to talk about this on the show before. I've listened to a lot of podcasts talking about it, but this is going to be a whole new concept for a lot of my listeners. So I'd like to kind of bring it back to the very beginning of it to kind of lay down a good framework for this concept for them.
All right. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so let me share my screen. I actually have some slides here for us. And so what we're talking about is the idea that Revelation 20, verse 7 is in your Bible. And I'm here to tell you, I was 10 years full-time in the ministry. I was a youth pastor and worship leader at Dave Wilkerson's church in New York, about 2,000 congregation. And then I was in lay ministry for 20 years, and now I've been in full-time for another 8 years, okay? Never in all of that time did I ever hear anybody suggest that this could be possible. Here it is. And when the 1,000 years had expired, that's the millennial reign. Okay, so you got the mark of the beast, the 7-year tribulation, and then you have Armageddon, and then Satan's thrown into the pit for 1,000 years, and then Jesus and the saints live in peace. That's when the lion lays down with the lamb, right? For 1,000 years. What we're saying is that's already happened 70 AD. And here's the scripture that talks about it, and then I'll show you the evidence that it's already happened. So it says, when the 1,000 years are expired, that's the millennial reign, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is like the sand of the sea. So that's going to happen at one point. So why not right now? How would you know if it isn't happening?
I mean, that could even go farther back. I mean, you could maybe even say that was around the time of World War I, because that would have been one of the first times that like all the nations were fighting each other too.
Yes.
In relatively recent history. And then it seems like everything's kind of been a weird spiral since then.
All right. Well, Christians are very demanding when it comes to any kind of topic that would come in and overturn a long-standing doctrine like the futurist doctrine of that we're heading towards the tribulation. So what evidence, and the first place that we are going to need to go is the Bible. Show me in the Bible where you're getting this. All right, so the first one of the what we call immediacy scriptures is Matthew 16:28. Jesus is talking, and he says, verily I say to you, there be some standing here which shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Now, what we call this is the clear testimony of Scripture. This is not telling you to go buy apples in the market. It's not telling you to go pick up your mat and walk. What it's telling you, Jesus is standing there and he's telling these people, there's people standing here right now that'll still be alive when I come back. That's exactly what he's saying. Now, in order to twist this scripture to not mean that, most people will try to suggest that really what he was saying was not the people standing there, but the state of Israel as a whole. Okay? But my problem with that is that the clear testimony of Scripture doesn't say that. The clear testimony of Scripture, and I'm a Bible believer, is that there are people standing here that'll still be alive till the Son of Man comes in his kingdom. Let me give you another one. All right, there's the commentary on that. I'm not going to get into that, but Here's the other one. Revelation chapter 1, verse 7. Behold, he cometh with clouds. This is Jesus coming with clouds, and every eye will see him. So in other words, when Jesus returns after he's crucified, he's going to come in clouds, and every eye will see him. And which also eyes will see him? Those that pierced him. So the very people that put him on the cross, physically, the soldiers, some of them will still be alive when he comes back again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm a Bible believer, okay? I believe when it says Jesus wept, that it doesn't mean Jesus laid down and go to sleep. It's words mean things. And the clear testimony of Scripture, you can't tell me I'm taking it out of context either. And you can't try to go and try to say, well, you have to go into the original. No, you don't. Okay, stop that. The clear testimony of Scripture here is that the people that put him on the cross will still be alive. And this is only two. There's actually about 15 what we call immediacy scriptures that are like this. Luke 12:40. You also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. Now, understand, if I tell you I'm going to the store and I'll be back in an hour, and I come back 2,000 years later, I'm a liar. I'm not coming back right away. I'm coming back in 2,000 years. So if we see these, what we call immediacy scriptures over and over.
Yeah, they would have used something like a century or a millennium, not an hour. Hour you do not expect. Like they would have used a different wording.
Absolutely. If you're a Bible believer, see, but if you don't like the doctrine, then you have to go in and twist it to make it fit what you want it to say. And the reason is pride, because you had the guy at the front of the room telling you all your Christian life, we're going into the tribulation. And then so your mind is going, well, this can't be true because the guy that I respect told me. That's basically what you're dealing with. So here, anyway, James 5:8, you two be patient and stand firm because the Lord is coming near. The Lord's coming is near. 1 Peter 4:7, the end of all things is near. Philippians 4:5, let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Hebrews 10:37, for in just a little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. All right, and there's more of these. So I've seen atheists who were debating Christians, and what the atheists pointed out was the Bible's not reliable. And the reason they said was because the apostles obviously believed Jesus was coming soon because of these types of statements.
I mean, I wouldn't take it any other way personally, at least from reading these. Like the wording would have been different. They would have mentioned... They just would have used completely different adjectives to describe like the time. Right.
So there's people a lot more research in this than I am that are going into the Bible, all throughout the Bible, and finding all kinds of scriptural evidence beyond what I just shared. But let's just say that's enough. I think that's plenty to let everybody know, this is not some cockamamie false doctrine. We are standing on solid biblical evidence that this idea is rational. It's biblically based. Okay, but what's the other evidence? The biggest one that really got me was the archaeological or the architectural evidence. You have these very, very ornate, complex stone buildings all over the world that can't possibly be explained the way they're being explained. We're told that they were built in a couple of years in the late 1800s by people with no power tools who lived in shanties. And, you've got these cathedrals with just massive piers and incredible carvings. I saw one guy, he's a stonemason. He said, these are not molds. These are carved with some sort of tool, and they measured it with lasers, and it's like exactly the same to the micron. He's like, we could probably not even do this now. So it's kind of like, do you believe the pyramids were built by slaves with ropes and pulleys? No.
Yeah, no, with bronze tools, and they've.
Right.
I mean, how many times have they proven that bronze tools would break trying to do that type of work? Like,
Right. It's
and then all the stuff in South America where you can't even put a hair in between the stones. Like,
isn't that cool?
you can't even do that now.
No, and some of those big giant 50-ton stones look like they were melted first because they're like they like loop around the edges of the other stones. It's really bizarre. But these buildings, okay, so what these buildings prove to us is that they're lying to us about our history, which, long story short, it goes to the idea that the 1,000-year reign happened, but it's being covered up. So these buildings were built during the millennial reign by the believers that lived during that period of time, because apparently they had tons of resources and time to make these works of art that we can't even duplicate now, probably. And we don't. We build little boxy buildings. We don't have all these time and resources to build these works of art. And they're all over the world.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you'd like to snag some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or your favorite creature or topic, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly. Welcome back to the show. Now let's dive right in. I mean, if you're talking about like the altered timeline theory too, I don't know how far you really dig into like the whole like Tartaria and like mud flood concept, but I mean, in relatively recent time, it seems like there may have been a lot of cathedrals and structures that were possibly way more advanced than what we believe that they were, using a lot of different like what was it? They were basically able to get energy out of the atmosphere somehow and basically conduct like free power, which also kind of goes into that idea that like, you know, everybody will have everything that they need and everything during this time and era. Like, it all kind of plays it somewhat in together with this stuff.
They're not telling us the truth about our history. And so this, you know, starts to open your eyes to stuff that you just didn't even notice, like the mud floods you mentioned. The melted buildings, those need an explanation. And this event where the millennial reign happened, it explains it. And then you have the orphan trains and the founding hospitals. I mean, that's so bizarre because you had a repopulating of the United States with babies where they were selling babies to all these people at the world's fairs. I mean,
this was during the Cabbage Patch Kids thing, right? Where they were like doing like the weird advertisements where it was like the whole concept of the Cabbage Patch Kids came from this, where it was like these old like pamphlets where there was like a person like tending like a garden full of like these really weird, uncomfortably accurate kids sitting in cabbages and everything. And it was all about like transportation and selling of like children across the United States. Like that's another weird rabbit hole to dive into all on its own too.
Bro, I don't know if you ever looked into the homunculus rabbit hole, but those Cabbage Patch Kids may actually have been homuncula, which is they were created in this bizarre satanic ritual where they use, I forget. Somebody went through it with me, and it's like
part of your own flesh, and you basically create this little so familiar like being that'll do whatever you need it to do out of your own flesh, and it's like this little weird like humanoid fleshy creature, the homunculus.
I actually had a normie response. I was like, you know what? I don't want to know about this. It's too creepy.
That's some like heavy occult stuff.
Yeah. That's what normies do. They don't know and they don't want to know. Anyway, this topic is really blowing a lot of people's minds because you look at what's going on in the world and it sort of looks like the mark of the beast and the tribulation and is on the way. But what we believe is that the elites are staging these events to trick everybody into thinking that we're still going into the tribulation. Because what they want to do is they want to have the 7-year tribulation, like fake it, and then not have Jesus show up. Like everybody thinks in pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib. So if you go through 7 years and then you're in year 8 or 9 and Jesus still hasn't come, all the Christians are going to backslide, man.
Something else kind of weird to think about too. So you were kind of bringing up earlier that other computer was being altered by human thought. it almost kind of makes you wonder if part of the intention, and I mean, this is already like an idea that when it comes into a lot of the occult stuff, is that people have to be aware of what you're doing to them. But on the other side of it, like if you project a thought into somebody's head and then they basically start like normalizing it into their possibility of reality, could it like cause these events to happen essentially where like, you know, you start throwing out an idea and then so many people start believing in that idea that it actually starts creating a separate timeline off of all that thought projection from those people. So it's kind of like this weird loop that, you know, you're saying that the computer is what's altering time, but it's not necessarily the computer altering time. It's everybody putting focus on this one thing, thinking it's the computer, and that's what's actually altering everything.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you've ever listened to the people that are really into the Archon narrative, so the Archons are these bizarre beings who really run everything.
Another Star Trek reference too.
Yeah, that's right. But they don't have like souls or emotions, and so they can't create. So but they're super intelligent, powerful. So they're controlling us in this farm that we're in. And so what they do is they use predictive programming to get us to envision it, because like you're saying, then we create the reality that they want.
Yeah, because then it's like, again, it's not even the machine in the first place. Like maybe that is the gateway that lets these things, or whatever they happen to be, these other entities, these disembodied beings, enter our reality. But the actual like altering of the timeline is being caused by us. And it's just that we're correlating the two together, but there's not necessarily a direct connection. It's all about the thoughts and intentions that, I mean, even making you wonder about some weird occult psyop with things, it makes you kind of wonder if they put some stuff out there here and there just to make it so that people will start thinking about that, so then it shifts the paradigm to something else. Like, I know that there was the whole thing that came out with Sinbad, where there was the, what was the name of that movie for Sinbad? I always mix up the two. Shazam?
Yeah.
It was one of those ones, but there's some weird video coming out where he was basically saying that like, oh yeah, it never existed. There was nothing like that. I never did that. And then in another one, he was like, it was a government psyop. They made me sign these NDAs. They made me not mention anything about it, blah, 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 blah. So like, if you place these little things here and there, and then people start questioning the rest of reality, it makes you wonder if it's like a domino effect that, you know, if they stage one Mandela effect, now all these other ones will ripple off of that one because people will start questioning their reality and in turn alter the timeline off of questioning the timeline.
100%. Well, you're actually stealing my thunder here, because what I just threw up on the screen here is a video I found where this girl was studying star forts, right? Have you ever seen or heard of star forts?
Yeah, that's another weird rabbit hole you start diving into, because that's hidden in a bunch of Disney movies. Like I was watching Atlantis with my kids not too long ago, and right in the beginning of that movie, there's a star fort during the initial attack. Like, yes. Weird because it's a Disney movie, you know? Like,
right. All right. Well, this graph here on the globe, these green dots, everywhere you see a green dot, there's a star fort there. Okay, so I did a poll on my YouTube channel with about 100 people in the live stream, and I asked everybody, let's say, you know, did you find out, how do I ask this? Is it true that you recently learned that there are such things as star forts? Maybe within the last year was the first time you'd ever heard about a star fort, and 70% said yes. Okay, so if you look at how many there's star forts all over the place. So what I'm proposing is that there's a correlation between Satan's little season and the Mandela effect timeline. So in other words, the star forts, which the people that are researching the Satan's little season, and I'll give you the two channels that I watch. Understanding Conspiracy on YouTube and JT Follows JC. Those are the two best researchers on that topic that I've found. Now they're looking at all the different history books and all the stuff to try to figure out what the timelines are. And what I'm saying is, what if star forts that they're looking at are actually from another timeline? Well, that's going to throw all their research into a tailspin, because now you got a real wild card problem. And I'll give you another example that I just realized the other day. All right, the term Mandela effect comes from Nelson Mandela supposedly dying in prison And everybody remembers that. And then all of a sudden he turns up and he's not dead. Well, that's where this term came from. That's how it was branded, the Mandela effect, where a large number of people remember him dying and then he shows up live. Well, guess what? Billy Graham had the same thing. Billy Graham supposedly died, and all these people remember his funeral, and then all of a sudden he's not dead. Well, now he subsequently died, but this is before. So here's the problem. The second Billy Graham was totally corrupt. The second Billy Graham was a 33rd degree Mason. He was interviewed by Robert Schuller, and he said, oh, yeah, Muslims can go to heaven as long as they love God. Well, Billy Graham would have never said that. He preached the gospel as Jesus is the only way. I mean, it was total heresy. So my point is this. If we're in Satan's little season, the number one presenting characteristic of this time is that Satan will be loosed again to deceive the nations. And so if that is the time that we're in, and he's got this fallen angel, he's got this technology at his disposal to be able to basically shift the timeline so that, and then have a different people coming back into the new timeline with bad characteristics. There's a scripture in the book of Revelation talks about the beast, and it says, who can make war with him? Well, that's what you would say if you could push levers and change timelines and bring people back from the dead and, make them evil for you. So now so the deception that people are under, trying to understand God, well, your Bible's being scrambled, and then they're trying to know what's God, and so they're listening to Billy Graham. Well, he's now an evil version of because Billy Graham would never have said that. So I'm starting to create a correlation between Satan's little season and the new timelines, because I'm telling you, I never knew of star forts until maybe a year ago. I'd never heard of them.
I mean, even to make another connection with that too, I mean, you have a lot of the woke ideology starting to come into the Vatican and starting to come into the Catholic ideas of things. So it's I'm starting to drive around now and see all of these pro LGBTQT plus signs all over churches. And at the end of the day, it's the church was always the main one that was it completely goes against the views of everything that the church speaks of. So why is it that in today's society, either one, are you trying to shift everything so that more people will come into the religion, or on the other side of it, is it a manipulation of the religion because there's actually these dark forces that are starting to manipulate things and, starting to contort the things that are the light,
It's perilous times. That's what Peter said. In the last days, perilous times will come. And so this is my mission. See, Wake Up or Else, we're a Christian fellowship for the truther community. And what I'm telling the church is, if you're a church leader and you're not a conspiracy theorist kook nut job living in your mom's basement eating pita pockets, trafficking in the dark corners of the internet, you're not going to be able to minister to the Christian in 2025. You got to know that NASA's fake and the earth is flat. You got to know that the world is run by secret tranny inverts that are blood drinking Luciferian psycho mobsters. You got to know that. You got to understand these things, that they're spraying us with chemtrails, that the GMOs are killing us, that the shot is it's a artificially intelligent parasite. It's a bioweapon, right? All of these things matter to the human race. And if you don't understand that the people on the public stage are wearing masks, there's no way that the Biden that we just watched for 4 years is the original Biden. You put the two pictures together, there's two different guys.
At least two. There was, detached earlobes, attached earlobes, and then there was also Daddy Longlegs towards the end, which is this younger, energetic guy. Like, there's at least three. And for anybody that thinks that's a conspiracy, any politician, any political leader, like, how many fill-ins do they have? Like, look at Castro. He had hundreds of them. So anybody that, like, can't even get into that conspiracy that there's doubles for political officials, like, I don't know what world you think you're living in. Like,
right. So we're watching some incredible show. And like I mentioned earlier, the transpocalypse is, to me, the most difficult of all conspiracies to accept because it's so pervasive, it's so widespread, that so many people are the opposite. Because you see governors and presidents. Well, right now, Candace Bergen is outing Macron's wife as a man. So the president of France's wife is a man, and the president of France is probably a woman. You could tell by their physiology, the different shape of the jawline of the man, the length of the neck. Does the woman that you're looking at actually have an Adam's apple protruding? The shoulders are different. There's all these tells, like the length of the middle finger or the ring finger is longer than the index finger on a man. Same size or longer. So you'll see Michelle Obama with a picture of her from the back, and you can perfectly see her hands, and this finger is longer than the index finger. And we know she's a guy because she's got a bulge.
I mean, even with her, too, there's been a few interviews where Obama has mistakenly called her Mike. I think there's like one or two of them. And even on top of that, how many allegations were coming out a couple of years ago about Obama back in his like college days and right after that when he first started becoming a politician about him, trying to get with like male prostitutes. Like there's been a few people who have straight up, not even on a conspiracy, who have made accusations of that. So, I mean, like there's this underlying thing that people are just kind of looking past that, like, if Obama is into that, then why does it seem so ridiculous that, the first lady would not be a lady to begin with in the first place? Like, and on top of the fact of just, there's so many different weird things with her that it's, there's all these people that have caught bulges from the side. Like, I know everybody thinks that it might just be like Photoshop and everything, but like, there's so much of it out there that, I don't know, either one, it's a giant facade that somebody's trying to psyop everybody, or on the other side, like there's some honest validity to it. And I tend to be on the side that there's a lot of validity to it.
I think the worst part for me is if you start to really become a trans investigator, you really start looking at every single person, and you cannot believe it's like all the movie people, all the people in Hollywood. It's called the great work. It has to be this way, where everybody is inverted. And then all the politicians, all the CEOs of companies, it's just everybody is the invert. You start to be like really freaked out by it, because what that means is that these central planners, these overlords, have the ability to control every aspect of civilization, because there's some part of us that has this belief, right, in the narrative that, well, if you're talking about an actor, let's say, they tell you their story of how they came up and they were a struggling actor and they got their first break with this. Well, no, none of that's real. It's all a storyline. They were breeded from birth to be an invert, and they were placed in these positions, and the whole thing is a complete menagerie. You're in a mouse maze. And then if that's true, then you're looking at this whole thing playing out with Trump, let's say, and you hoping for the best. You don't believe in him at all. You think he's a Zionist or he's a shill and it's a false light narrative and all that. But you're like, you don't even realize how bad it is, because it's worse. I don't think we're in pods like in the Matrix, but it's almost that bad.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. So let's hop right in. I mean, just to dive into another weird rabbit hole, before I even open up this can of worms, are you familiar with what the Weimar Republic is?
The Weimar Republic. That's where they had the currency collapse in Germany, right?
Yes. So basically what this goes back to was that there was the Weimar Republic, which was basically like complete depravity. Like there was like a bunch of different prostitution happening with like young daughters and like mothers. There was a lot of gender bending going on. There was like a lot of this weird exploitive sexuality that was all intended to be for profit, and not to get into like the other weird dark side of all this. This starts getting into some really, really weird conspiracies, but essentially, that entire thing was being run by the group that, that whole regime during that time ended up being against. And basically like the whole intention of why everything started was basically to get rid of that group, because they were bringing in this depravity into the country. And if you start diving into the whole aspect that like history repeats itself, and if history is going to repeat itself, of course that is going to be the history that they're going to try to cover up. You kind of fall into a weird spot now where we have basically a Weimar Republic situation happening in the United States, and the inevitable other side of that is that there is going to be a side that is going to be a complete stand-up revolt completely against that. And whatever way you want to try to view history, either one, it's going to be this idea that they're trying to get rid of the base thing that was starting all of this disgusting stuff that was happening in the country, and that's inevitably what led into the other thing. But if you bring it into the context now that I'm not saying I'm on necessarily either side of the political spectrum, because I think that it's all a giant game to begin with. But, you have this one side that's completely to the other side, and then you have this one side that's completely the other side, and eventually those sides are going to clash, and the one prevailing side is going to be the side that you're able to recontrol again. And I'm trying to kind of leave this somewhat vague without trying to say a bunch of trigger words that are going to get this episode pulled, because this is starting to get really, really deep into some really weird stuff, and I don't want people to start taking it the wrong way or getting offended by it, because I'm just trying to state some information here. But it seems like we're at a point where we're starting to kind of repeat this same cycle again between the left and the right, and what the Weimar Republic was, and what the inevitable rise of the power that was in Germany at that time was. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you have to start it somewhere, though. To be able to get to a point of complete totalitarian ideas, you first have to have this pocket of complete depravity where everybody is just doing the absolute most disgusting things possible, because that's how that wave starts again, where people are begging to have this stuff stop. And from there is where you're able to strip rights from people, and where you're able to strip freedoms, and basically you trick and manipulate people into completely giving up freedoms to stop this weird taboo thing that's happening over here. Sure.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, I don't know. We got maybe not that much time left. I'd like to just end maybe with some topic, the discussion of Trump, because it's such a polarized topic, and I just love diving into that topic just for a minute, if it's all right. Because
absolutely, that's what I was trying to lead into with all of what I was trying to say. But like I said, it's like there's a lot of very, very deep conspiracies that as soon as you start bringing up any of that stuff or saying any key words in that, the episodes will start getting pulled. So that specific topic is a really, really hard one to explain without hitting keywords. So for anybody that was listening to that, hopefully you followed what I was trying to put down. But yeah, that's just, you want to dive into the weird stuff. Look at the alternate history of World War II and what a totally different perspective on that stuff is, because it starts getting real weird.
Well, what I was going to say in the little time we have left is I did a talk recently called "I Just Want to Have Fun While I'm Being Ruled by Luciferian Pedivores." Okay, so basically the idea is for the last 7 or 8 years, however long you've been in a truther track, you've been wanting to see the tyranny pushed back. You wanted to see, all of the corruption, and especially all the DEI and the LBG, all this just flagrant wickedness being flaunted in our face with drag queen story time in the libraries, and putting porn books in the kindergarten library, and the parents come in and they start reading the book that's in the library of their public school, and they're thrown out because they're not allowed to speak such horrible things in the city council meeting. And they're like, hello, you're giving this to my 5-year-old or whatever. So
they're making a documentary on the Weimar Republic for Netflix and trying to make it sound like it was a positive thing too. So I mean, talk about spinning another narrative with sexuality.
Wow. I see where you're going. Well, all I'm saying is that we're actually seeing this happen now. Now, the truther community is so jaded. We're like a dog that's been just put in a kennel out in the backyard, and then once a day somebody goes out and beats him with a 2x4. That's what we're like. And we're just so jaded about any hope, anything good. We are not allowing our hearts to go out to this show that we're seeing, that this could be some savior scenario. So the general consensus is, he's a Zionist. He's setting us up for the Noahide laws. He's going to bring in the one world system. We don't know what the gotcha is, right? We don't really know unless you're on the inside, but we're not letting our guard down for a minute. So all I'm suggesting is that in the short term, give yourself the permission to just enjoy like them going in and finding all of this corruption, USAID, this is what we've all wanted to see our entire truther life, and it's happening. And I'm not, naive or saying that, he's going to bring us into this golden age or whatever. I don't know when or how the hammer is going to come down, what's going to happen, but I'm just telling you that for the first time as a truther, I'm like, all right, man, this is so great, right? And just give yourself permission to enjoy it while it's happening.
I completely agree with that, because I almost find it like comedic what they've actually discovered a lot of this money was being spent on, and everybody wants to kill the the messenger. Everybody's mad at Elon Musk, but it's like the dude's not doing anything. He's just shutting down and pointing out all of this corruption that's happening within the system. And just to point it out, I'm not left or right wing. I may lean more towards one side, but I see it that left ring or right ring, it's all part of the same bird, and inevitably it'll end up back in the same place again. And the way that I kind of see it is either one, if you would have picked the last one in this one, you would have ended up with this woke ideology, which would have eventually led to the stripping away of freedoms like freedom of speech, freedom of this, because that would be the means of doing that. But with this other option, yes, like you said, we're getting our wins in the beginning, which I'm all for, definitely be happy about. But, you have that black pilled mentality, like you said, being a conspiracy theorist. So like I see the inevitable possibility that it might just be another route to the same thing, that going through this means it's just through a technological future where your rights are stripped away because, you get scanned every time you go into this area. They're able to track where you're going when you do this, so it's like either one, you're getting your freedom of speech and everything stripped away from this means, or on the other side, you're getting your freedom to be an individual and, have your own right to be private taken away because of this tech future. So it's like inevitably leading to the same place. It's just pick your poison.
100%. We're really not, there's nothing we can do to stop what's happening. We're just powerless, and nobody really knows. We all have strong opinions. Unless you have some contact that's high up in the power structure, you really don't know who's behind the show. Like, for instance, Elon is a prop. I mean, his rockets are totally fake. They look like Flash Gordon from the 70s.
He literally said he wants the tips to be pointy because of the movie The Dictator, because there's a scene in it where the guy's like, which is the same guy who played Borat and everything, where the one guy makes like a rocket and it's rounded on the top, and he's like, that's not scary. It needs to be pointed. So, yeah, there was some interview where Elon Musk said that he makes the tips of all of his rockets pointy because of the movie The Dictator, because he thought that scene was funny, that it's not intimidating unless that has a pointy tip.
I didn't hear that. That's so hilarious. Well, it's, to me, there's this staging going on with Elon where he's being billed as the richest guy in the world and this boy genius. He's supposedly running 9 companies, and he's basically abandoning them and running the government thing. And it seems like they really decided that NASA needed a facelift, because NASA's been beaten down by people like us so long that nobody believes in them anymore. So it seems like they're transitioning out of NASA, and they're just going to focus on this Elon. And actually, there was another private company that supposedly just landed a thing on the moon. Did you see that?
Yeah, it wasn't Bezos, right? Because I know Bezos is into all that stuff. And then there's also a lot of Chinese tech that they've been particularly fascinated with the moon for the past, maybe 5-10 years, because they sent a rover onto the moon maybe 5 years ago. Right,
but it's if you're a flat earther, you believe there's a dome over the earth. There's nothing going to the moon. We're an enclosed system. But I did this whole analysis of his rockets, the rockets taking off, and then supposedly this rocket is falling down perfectly, like with no rocket, it's just perfectly falling straight. It's not end over end or anything. It's got no wings. How is it not falling end over end? And then right at the end, who knows how fast it's going? Free falling. And then this little puff of rocket cars. It was so fake. It's almost by purposely looks fake. It can't be that fake. They're doing it on purpose. And so my point is that, okay, well, they apparently need Elon to be built up to be this guy that everybody respects and just is like in awe of, right? Because he's got the robots, he's releasing his electric cars outsell all the other electric cars combined. So he's got these creds so that when he comes in to come next to Trump because they don't need Elon to do what he's doing. They could have any number of forensic analysis guys doing that. They don't need Elon. So he's there for a reason.
They just want a face. Right? Yeah, they need a character. Yeah. They need a face because with a lot of these organizations, whether you want somebody to blame or you just want to have somebody that everybody's like, yeah, I like that guy. I like his personality. So they're going to be a little bit more lenient with what's going on. No matter what, every organization does better with the face, either, again, in the positive or to simply have somebody to blame.
So it looks like they're going to totally revamp the whole financial system. And then I did a talk, it's on my YouTube channel, on the quantum financial system, and Nicera Gacera. I mean, I started looking at Nicera 6 years ago. It looked like a new age pipe dream. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was talking about getting rid of the IRS, forgiving all the debt. Everybody's going to get all this money. They're going to go back to constitutional law. Well, guess what? Trump is talking openly about eliminating. Now they're talking openly about it. Everybody under $150,000 a year, no income tax. They're now talking openly. They're also talking about debt forgiveness. They're also talking about returning to constitutional law. Everything in the Nicera Gacera checklist is being implemented or talked about. So this is the white hat scenario, okay, which I'll tell you the people. It's Charlie Ward, and I'm not endorsing these people. I'm just telling you who's spearheading the narrative. Charlie Ward, Simon Parks, Benjamin Fulford, Jocko, X22 Report, Bo Poloni, Mel, what's her name? These are like what I call good news truthers. All right, and they're very plugged into the patriotism narrative, and they kind of invoke God, but they're New Age. They don't really invoke Jesus, and they're also talking about how this quantum financial system's coming in, right? Well, all this time I'm watching them. There's a lot of stuff that they're saying that's misinformation, but a lot of it's also true. So I finally find this thing on the OCC.gov, the Office of the Comptroller, and I have it on my computer. It's not there anymore. They scrubbed it. And it's a note, it's a correspondence to a Mexican bank telling them your money is being delayed because there's a currency reset and your transmission is operating in tandem with the quantum financial system. That's what it says. All right, now that could be a plant, but I'm going to let's assume it isn't, okay? And it's on a government website, and it's evidence that this is true. Well, now there's tons more evidence than that, but what I'm saying is that there is a huge shift coming that is, on the surface, it all appears good. Like you're going to have debt forgiveness. I think that's good. Imagine if you didn't have to pay any income tax. I'm here to tell you that would be good. Well, they're going to draw us in. Okay, I understand the gotcha. Okay, I understand the gotchas out there. But my point is, I have no power to exchange whatever's coming. So I'm going to position myself now in a mindset that will allow me to capitalize on the opportunities that will be presented in the short term. Because if you're really skeptical, in other words, there's two different responses as a truther. One is skepticism. The other one is cynicism. That's what I wanted to say. We're all cynics, and that's a good characteristic because you got your kung fu on. You're not gullible. But skeptic, but cynical isn't good. It clouds your perception. It makes you vulnerable to deception. Cynical, it's negative. You're sucking your teeth, you're rolling your eyes, and everybody's a shill, right? And nothing's good, it's going to happen. Well, I don't believe that. Okay, the devil's greatest trick is not to convince everybody that he doesn't exist. His greatest trick is to convince everybody that good doesn't exist.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
And manipulate and corrupt people's perception. That's the ultimate way for trickery. I mean,
yep.
Which goes back to the whole Mandela effect concept, that could it simply be as simple as if Lucifer himself can alter the physical world, maybe it's just simply him trying to put little seeds of doubt into people's faith. I mean, definitely possible.
Definitely possible.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. Let's hop right in. And I guess with that, this is probably a perfect opportunity to do some words of wisdom, because I know that we've kind of been black-pilled a little bit for a little bit of time here. There's a little bit of a positive message there, like you said, trying to, make profit with, all of the scenarios that are currently happening. But I mean, at least for me, make sure you never get fully black-pilled, because then at that point, then there's no hope. You got to have at least a little glimmer of hope. But if there's any words of wisdom that you might want to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
All right. Well, I will throw out the possibility that what we are witnessing is a divine intervention by God, because he did this with a king. He actually prophesied it through Isaiah 1,000 years in advance and named the guy. His name was Cyrus. So God used a pagan king that wasn't a godly man to deliver the children of Israel. And there are certain prophecies that line up with Trump that he is that guy. I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying that as a truther, you got to keep your options open, or it clouds your ability to discern, because that's what normies do. Normies know what they believe, and they won't be confused with the facts. So other evidences are prophecies like Kim Clement nailed it. He had really detailed prophecy about Trump, that he would have 2 terms, which he ended up having. There would be a space in between, which he had. And he said the second term would be different. He said in the second term, he would actually be a praying president. So here's the wild card. Okay, I understand there's all this evidence that Trump's a Kabbalist and he's a Zionist. I understand that. Okay. However, what you don't know is if he got visited by the angel of the Lord somewhere and is converted. That could have happened. And it would line up with the prophecy of Kim Clement that he is a Cyrus and he's here to bring humanity, to break us free from a millennium of captivity under Babylonian debt slavery. Because all I'm saying is that's what's happening. That's what my eyes are watching happen. So it's, but what I say after I say that is I say, if we're still even alive in 12 months, I'll be as shocked as anybody. So I got healthy skepticism, believe me.
But I mean, at least with the whole thing going on with Trump, it's like, I don't know. I like to hopefully have some positive belief on it, that maybe, going back and forth, that you had to have that first term so to kind of lay the groundwork. The second one, you had to have that completely in a different direction, so that in this new term with him coming in, people actually want what he's trying to do. And I mean, whether that's positive or that's negative, I guess it kind of depends on people's perspective, but I'm hoping that it's the positive one. It's just, again, the conspiracy theorist in my mind that, it's hard for me to ever get behind any candidate, no matter what they're saying, because I will always have doubt in the back of my mind. And it's one of those things that if you've been lied to enough times, it's hard for you to believe anybody, even if they're speaking the complete truth. Because we could have the next politician come out and speak everything complete truth and try to set everything to exactly how it should be. But us conspiracy theorists will still have that doubt in the back of our mind. Like, what is your intention here? Like, when people start speaking to the quote conspiracy theorist, the conspiracy theorist question, like, why are you speaking to me? Like,
yeah, right. Plus, there's so much confluence on the time that we're in right now, like the prophecy of the popes. I don't know if you ever seen that. And the guy was a priest way back when, and he prophesied every single pope that would exist and said specific things about each one, and they all have it. It's unbelievable. And he told exactly how many there would be, and the last pope is the pope that we have now.
I mean, how many 2025 premonitions are there about, like, you know, from Baba Vanga, for example, saying that the World War III and this all-out holy war is going to start in the Middle East in 2025, and it seems like we're kind of on those lines, but there's a lot of weird predictions for 2025, and all of them seem to be based around, like, some type of world war or holy war that all seem to start in the Middle East, which just fully plays into this whole biblical paradigm of everything.
Well, I mean, there does appear, like, if you think that Trump is part of a false light narrative, and I don't doubt it, you know, it's probably correct, but let's just say, or let me just say it like this. Doesn't it seem like there is a real battle between good and evil going on? I mean, the Dems look totally vanquished, and they look, so if it's a false light narrative, what that means is Trump is brought in to betray the existing group of bad people. He's a higher level bad guy. So he's on the same team as the overlords, and he's double crossing all of the underminions and then getting us to kind of go along with him because they need to trick us into complying, right? So that's the false light narrative. So that certainly is probable. Okay, but I'm just saying that if we're in Satan's little season, I have more optimism. Because if we're going into the tribulation, the Bible is giving me an eschatological timeline or predicting what's coming. Well, now it's sort of an open field. Like, there isn't really a lot to go on if we're actually in Satan's little season. So that kind of has given me more permission to have some optimism. Like, for instance, if it is a false light narrative, it might be 10 years from now.
That's true.
We might get to die of old age if we're in Satan's little season.
Or get locked into some type of virtual future. I mean, I've definitely theorized about that, trapping people within some type of, like, virtual system.
Oh my gosh. AI is definitely an existential threat. And I mean, they can't keep chemtrailing us. That's another existential threat. There's so many existential threats.
It's geoengineering. They're trying to help the weather. That's what they're saying now in the mainstream media. We're crazy for believing in chemtrails forever, but now they vaguely talk about geoengineering on the news, and it's okay because we need it, right?
Well, what I was going to point out was it does seem like there is a battle going on, but, like, not everybody's on the same team. And my point is, if the bad guys are getting routed, they're not going to just go like, well, we've ruled the earth for thousands of years. I guess that's that. And you won. No, they're going to go scorched earth, and they're going to release some really nasty bug or take us into World War III. They certainly seem to be doing that.
Hey, you got to nuke it, I guess. That's the logic, right? If you're not going to win, you just nuke the whole board. It's almost like you start losing that Monopoly. You know, what happens? You don't just leave everybody else to play. You flip the whole damn board. Like,
absolutely. And that's actually what they said they would do. They told Benjamin Fulford that. They said, we've ruled the world for thousands of years, and if we can't rule the world, we'll burn it, we'll blow it up. That's what they told them. And see, the white hat narrative is playing out. The Q movement, Trump is Q. So in other words, the people that said that Q and the white hat narrative was fake are wrong. Now, it might be part of a false light narrative, but the fact that it doesn't exist has been proven to be wrong. It's happening. Everything the white hat narrative said is happening.
I'm waiting for Q to pop back up again at some point. I mean, at some point during this Trump candidacy, like.
Well, I mean, I'm not like a Q expert, and I followed it when it first came out, and it was really interesting. And a lot of the predictions, there were predictions that happened that didn't come true, but there was a lot that did to the second. So you have to, ask yourself, well, how did the people that predicted these things know to the second that these things are going to happen 2 years later.
Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break. But if you enjoyed the show and think I deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show. Now back with that deep conversation you crave. I mean, there's still room to be wrong, though, because when you start getting into the timeline things, I know, like, I've mentioned this a million times when people start talking about future predictions, that if timelines are always altering and changing, you know, somebody might see one timeline, but it doesn't mean that we're going to stay on that timeline. So, I mean, like, you know, if somebody has a handful of predictions and some of them are just absolutely on point and other ones are just completely off, like, again, you have to take into consideration they might be from two different timelines, or they're viewing into two different timelines, or when they made those predictions, we were on one timeline and then we altered onto another one at some point after that. So
I've had people try to convince me of that idea where it's called a reality bubble. Like, you and I are in the same room, or like, we'll use chemtrails. They would try to suggest that when you point up to the sky and you show people the chemtrails, that they're actually seeing something different than you are standing right next to you. I don't believe that. Do you?
No, I don't. Definitely not. I think it's just a matter of people don't want to see what they don't want to see. Like,
right.
You know, that movie Don't Look Up. Like, prime example. Like, they had all the means to tell everybody. They ran around telling everybody. All the people had to do was simply just look up. But if you have enough people saying, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, everybody's going to fall into that comfort and nobody's going to look up. And that's kind of where we're at now. Like, all of us conspiracy theorists running around like a chicken with our heads chopped off, just trying to get people to look, and nobody wants to look. And I mean, maybe that's why they made that movie, as like a, you know, like an FU to all the conspiracy theorists. Like, you're going to run around doing this forever while we're the ones controlling everything and nobody's looking up.
Aren't normies incredible? Normies are really... They're not taking any prisoners, man. They're unbelievable.
They just watch that movie as a comedy, not as like a precautionary message for how society actually functions.
But they just don't want to know.
But
they do not want to know.
On another side, perfect leeway in, actually, for people that do want to know. You were saying before the show that you actually offer your books for free.
I do.
This might be a perfect opportunity for those that do want to know to be able to go and check those books out. So if anybody wanted to check those out, they want to check out any of your other work, or they want to contact you for any reason whatsoever, how might people do that?
Awesome. All right. Well, let's start with the last thing. My email is wakeuporelse@proton.me. M as in Mary, E as in elephant. My YouTube channel is Wake Up or Else on YouTube. wakeuporelse.com is where you can download the books for free, or you can download them at alteredbible.com. I actually have a live interactive quiz with like 17 questions that you could take a quiz on alteredbible.com and see if you fail miserably, because all those scriptures have been changed. And then there's a bunch of videos there you can watch that answers all the objections.
Well, perfect. And I will make sure that I include all of those links down in the show description so everybody can find it quick and easy. And I appreciate you making the time to come on today, man.
Yes,
it was a great conversation. And hopefully we can get together sooner rather than later next time and dive into some more of this crazy world that we live in, man.
For sure. We'll definitely stay in touch, my friend. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for listening, guys.
If you guys enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you is exactly how the show grows. So thank you guys. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any other reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones I'm most active on, or through the submission form, which is available on the top of the link tree, which is available down in the show notes. Or you guys can also call in or text the hotline, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys have some free time, don't forget to check out the awesome friends of the show, IKNOWSQUATCH, Snarly Owl Natural Products, Cryptoteeology, and Big Ape Threads, and our friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Mule, with additional discounts and credits available. More information on those is available down in that show description. And every single thing I mentioned throughout the show is all available on the link tree, which again is available down in that show description. And with that, Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's shows connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey. With a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer.